can't hear it. Well, hello. Did you hear that? It's the sound of the songbirds. Yes! It is so good to see you all. I know it's been a fair minute, but trust me, it's going to be so worth the wait. Because today, I have a co-host in the form of this lovely little plant that I cut off a tree, known as a tree. And inside it is a tiny other plant known as a plantain. Today, it's going to get saucy, y'all. And by that, I mean super greeny and foliagey. Because I can't even wait to tell you the wonders of what's been going on. It's been a few weeks, granted, for many of you. But I promise you, it's going to be so worth the wait. Check this out, shall we? I've been diving into some ridiculous studies of plant physiology. Because you know what happened? Obviously, huge fan of nature here. Hold on. Let me reach for a rock. I'm a big fan of nature. Big time. So much so that I love to shove my face in the stinking face of the earth. I swam in the springs of the deep and drank of the fountains of the deep with my mouth. Yes, there's springs that come out of the earth that you can put your mouth on and you can drink of them. And it is so good for your soul. You ever read Psalm chapter 1? I don't know if you have or not, but let's do it anyways, shall we? Because there's something fundamentally necessary for each and every one of you to experience in your life, and one of them is drinking raw spring water. I'm talking about unfiltered. The only thing that filters it is your teeth. That's the kind of raw water I'm talking about here. I've done that so many times lately that I'm just hopped up on all kinds of stupendous glory, and I can't wait to share it with you. But if you would consider drinking out of raw water, well, water obviously is fantastic, but spring water does oodles of amazing things inside your body. And I drank from a mineralized spring recently that had a very high sulfur trioxide content, and it was invigorating. And you know what it did? Chelated heavy metals out of my body. Y'all ever experienced some heavy metals in your body? Plenty of y'all. Some of you guys are lining up and getting your kill shots taken right at you, full of heavy metals. But don't worry, even if that's happened in your life in the past, you can get that stuff out of your body in a tremendously powerful way. Sulfur-rich waters does that too, and it's tremendous. But you know what? So do these plants on the regs. They're so smart. It's ridiculous. Plants are tremendous, and we're going to learn some amazing things today about plants and the sword of the covenant. Check this out, y'all. I got a new sword because I've been plumb wearing some swords out these days from swinging them so much. But I got a new sword. It's called the Hallelujah Scriptures. It's amazing. Pause for a second here as I just give a shout out to this fantastic company. I'm a big fan of people giving things away. Because if you didn't know it, we have an entire ministry called the LinenRailroad, where we go and find clothes that are garments of praise. Check out Becoming a Linenite. Garments of gladness that you can put on your body, like this one's made of linen. We have other ones made of cashmere. Cashmere. This is wool. Sorry. Also, I mean, wool is cashmere too, but this is cashmere. Cashmere, it's amazing. All you Northerns and Canadians, we'd love to send that to you. But we buy garments for people, wash them, and hang them in the sun to get recharged by the glory of the splendor of creation. And then we roll them up in super tiny packages and stuff them full of seashells and treasures and fossils and gemstones that I find all across the earth. And then we send them to people for free. Because I believe if you find the greatest treasures of the earth, you should give them away. Because the best thing you could ever do is not seek to profiteer or merchandise people. Because, you know, Yeshua personally made a weapon to drive out the people that were merchandising his house. He was pissed, veritably, like certifiably upset about it, so much so that he made a weapon to whoop people who merchandise humans. So don't do it. Needless to say, I like the scriptures. Swords are super important in your life, right? I love the Sefer. Sefer is fantastic. It's tremendously expensive, though. It's like $95. The scriptures translation, also one of my go-tos. One of my favorites ever, too. The Sefer, I don't know. This was maybe only like $25 or $30. Super reasonably priced. Sefer is super expensive. This company, you know what they're doing? Giving it away. I'm not even kidding you. If you want a scriptures that actually has like the names put back in it, we're going to talk a little bit about that today, about like why that's definitely fundamentally super important in your life and why it's been transformational just in mine. So for what it's worth, the Hallelujah Scriptures, though, this one's like leather bound. You can get a Bible from them, a sword, for free. If you absolutely fundamentally cannot afford it, like seriously can't afford it, you know what you can do? You can pray and ask the Father to give you some funds for a Bible. Or you can go to these people, the Hallelujah Scripture people, and ask them for scriptures, and they will give it to you. They're also giving it away to people all over the face of the earth because they believe people need the sword of the covenant. This one's so special. You know why I'm super stoked about it? Because it's got the English and the Hebrew. Hold on a second. Right next to each other. Come on! Parallel Bibles, Old and New Testament. I've had to use like Jewish Tanakhs traditionally in order to get it parallel Bible that's English and Hebrew. But here's somebody who's swinging the sword from both ends because, you know, it's a double-edged sword. You can't just swing the old without the renewed covenant. Anyways, I'm super pumped about it. I know that's a sidetrack, but I really am elated. So I'm going to be reading from that today, and I'm super pumped. So shall we dive into Psalm 1, and then we'll dive into these beautiful plants, can we? All right, let's jump there. Techalim. Check this out, y'all. In this scriptures, Malachi is not the last book of the Old Testament. And for most of history, Malachi was not the last book of the Old Testament. Techalim, Psalms, is right after Malachi. And we're going to be diving into Malachi, so get your sword ready. All right, you ready for this? Psalm chapter 1. Do you get what I'm saying here? This is like the opening ensemble of David's orchestra. I don't think most of us have any idea how beautiful the Psalms really are because we've never really heard them sung. Today is going to be getting into music too, which I've never tackled because a lot of people are like, why don't you recommend music or have music? And Chelsea handles the music side of stuff. If you're watching one of our videos and it's got some beautiful post-production music undertones going on, that's all Chelsea. I did my first music video ever in my video called Kill Shots. So you can check that out. It's the Psalms. And there's a big, long reason for that in my life. And most of that has to do with the weaponization of music. Because honestly, music is one of the most potent weapons that exists, period. It is tremendously powerful when it comes to influencing our souls, our minds, our wills, our emotions, our intellect, our desires, right? It can sway us and persuade us and move us in such a powerful way with such a simple thing. And so for me, in my life, music had been a tool that I used and other people used around me to evoke types of emotions that would profiteer for other people. Things like rage and violence and hatred and murder and slander. And so I steered very far away from music when I came on my path of like restoration and healing, like I talk about in my book, Snatched from the Flames. And I leaned very, very heavily towards like worship music, almost exclusively. And what that led me to, though, was trying to find worship music that was not seeking to just glorify humans and the attributes of like the Father loving us, but more so ones that like glorified the Father and his attributes. Does that make sense? And so that led me really to just listen to people that sang the Psalms. Like I really like Sons of Korah were one of the ones I first got introduced to, but then this other gentleman named James Block, maybe I'll roll in some of his clips.
Fret not because of the wicked, nor envy the workers of wrong. They prosper, their riches will soon be all gone. Cease from your anger and vengeance, delight yourself in God, and He will bring forth your justice.
But I reach down.
Your light will shine like the dawn.
Thousands of miles of journey to find you. Beautiful little megalodon too. Look at he's perfectly gonna fit on a necklace. Oh, be a stone of testimony. Yahweh is so faithful. Oh, merciful.
They will inherit the earth. They will inherit the
I just love hearing the Psalms being sung. And it's amazing to me to get to hear somebody who's taken this tapestry and woven it together to become this beautiful, unique, digestible poetry. And I think that's an incredible talent, and I'm so thankful that the Father has created people that can do that. If you have a favorite artist who does the Psalms, I would love to see recommendations in the comments below. So please share that with me. I'm always eager to hear that. But other than that, I pretty much didn't listen to music for any other reason in my life. I just would listen to the scriptures, right? I got hooked on phonics, meaning the Hebrew phonics, where the original origin story of mankind comes from. I've been listening to that and trying to study and learn Hebrew because it's the origin story. And I want to know it like intimately well. But today I rediscovered a why of some of the most beautiful things when it comes to the symphonies that are being sung all around us, like this little guy hears every single day, that you and I need to hear and listen and regard as precious and valuable because it'll give us life again. So let's check this out. You ready? Tehillim, Psalm chapter 1. Baruch is the man. Baruch is the word blessing. You're going to hear Baruch a lot because it's an amazing word that means blessing or blessed. Baruch is the man who shall not walk in the counsel of the wicked, and shall not stand in the path of sinners, and shall not sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the Torah of Yahuwah, and he meditates in his Torah day and night. For he shall be as a tree planted by the rivers of water, that yields its fruit in its season, and whose leaf does not wither, and whatever he does prospers. The wicked are like the chaff, which the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked shall not rise in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For Yahuwah knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked comes to naught. Hold on a second. I've got to grab for you some chaff because I just saw some outside. Hold on. You ready for this? Chaff. Check it out. Hold it real still. You see that? Chaff, son. You know what's amazing about chaff? It's dead. Yeah, completely. Like these cells, they might be alive for a couple days. True story. Like when you pick a piece of fruit off a tree, the cells inside it are alive for like 3 days, maybe even 4. They're still alive for a while. But you know what's going to happen? They're going to wither. Just like these. This is chaff because somebody cut this grass, I say very loosely, plants that were growing outside, the salad and the buffet that was out there for everybody to eat. They just cut it down because, it's inconvenient to walk in stuff that's taller than ankle deep. It's exhausting, but you could be eating it. I know. Anyways, this is chaff now because what happened was this was cut off, son. Scioned. Stinking sliced right off of the stalk that it was a part of, the roots. This has also been cut off, but you know what's interesting? I still got it in water, so it's not dead yet. But did you hear this? In Psalm chapter 1, there's 2 kinds of things out there that are going to take place. Sinners and wicked people, right? Eventually, they're going to turn into this. Do you know what happens in a fire when you throw this into it? Do you know what happens in a fire when I throw this into it? It doesn't burn instantly. Sometimes it's stinking impossible to burn plants like this. No, for real. Like, they survive, they endure. And so when a hot, horrible, blisteringly miserable day comes along, chaff turns to dust and it blows away in the wind. This thing, do you know what it does on a hot, stinking, insufferably windy, nasty day? It breathes. True story. Do you know how it breathes? Stoma. This is going to get me to the most enthusing discovery of the day. Check this out. Plants. This, I believe, is a maple. Hang in there, buddy. Plants have these leaves, right? And I've talked to you guys about this in my Mighty Maccabees series when I talked about auxins and how plants know how to use these leaves and turn them into omnidirectional solar panels. They can orient and point themselves and grow arms in directions of places where there's more sunlight. So like even on the bark of this tree, it's got this stuff in there called auxins, which is a hormone that detects, there's stuff called phototropic, meaning it detects sunlight. And it goes towards it. So this detects right now, at the size of where it's at, that there's sunlight hitting this thing on all sides of it. So it's growing branches and sprouting them out basically from all sides. But you ever walk around a forest and you'll notice where there's a thick established canopy already present, the trees as they're growing up, pine trees in particular, which is where these pictures come from, you can see they grow branches only on one side of their trunk. That's because the trunk is detecting sunlight on that side of itself. So it shoots out its branches on that side of its trunk. which allows it to put out those solar panels to collect the sunlight that's available on that side of itself. Now, if, say, you thinned the forest around it of a lot of those tiny pipsqueak shorty trees that are just choking out some of the sunlight, you could develop a broader canopy from a single plant like this. This thing would bulk up and fill out to try to capture and maximize all that sunlight that's available to it. This plant is stinking smart, y'all. So smart. It knows how to find sunlight, and it knows how to grow and orient itself when there is more sunlight. And another thing it does is it takes these leaves, and every single morning, do you know what happens? There's these things on the underside. If I hold it really closely, you still won't be able to see it because it's like 1/1000th of an inch. But if I had a microscope, don't worry, some other guy did, and he took these sweet pictures, so I'll show you those now. If you look very, very closely, there's these things called stoma on the bottoms of these leaves. And what these stoma are like tiny little mouths. And what they do is they can literally open them and close them. And they will close them on a super hot, scorching, dry kind of conditions. They close those things off, those little mouths. They shut them out. So that way the plant doesn't wither away completely and exhaust itself of all of its water content and die. Instead, what it does is at night, while everybody is sleeping and those stomas are closed, in the early morning, a very special thing takes place that you all have probably heard thousands, millions of times in your life, and you've never recognized how incredibly powerful and important it was. If you ever step out, like this morning, here's what took place. This morning I got up because my heart started pounding incredibly hard out of my chest, and I knew it was time to wake up. I got up, I went outside because I'm prone to do this, barefoot, to walk on the wet grass, which is something I do because there's this thing called My Water Cure. Buy the book used on Amazon. It's like $5. It'll transform your life. Anyways, cold water therapy and all this other stuff. Treatment number 1 for basically healing every single problem you've ever had in your physical body is getting in cold water. But you could also walk on fresh fallen snow barefoot. The best. Second best option, if that's not available to you, walk barefoot on wet grass for 30 minutes. I'm not joking. It's amazing. Because what happens is there's this thing called the dew of the heavens. We're going to get there. Genesis 27, y'all. Anybody else picking up where I'm going? Check this out. The dew of the heaven comes down, and it falls upon and it creates this dew of the earth. And that dew falls perfectly. Dew is only ever a blessing, okay? Baruch. The dew is the Baruch of the earth. You want to be a plant. If you're a plant, you want the dew of the heavens. Because what the dew does that's different than the rain is that it never causes a flood. It never crushes or erodes the soil. It simply only does a Baruch. It is the definition of a blessing. The dew of the heavens is what used to water the earth. And I'll just read it. Come on. It's so good. Check this out, y'all. Genesis chapter 1, Bereshit. Are you ready for this? Now no shrub of the field was yet on the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprung up, for Yahweh Elohim had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no man to till the ground. But a mist, dew, went up from the earth and watered the entire surface of the ground. And Yahweh Elohim formed the man out of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. And Yahweh Elohim planted a garden in Eden to the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground Yahweh Elohim made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, with the tree of high life in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it divided and became 4 riverheads. The original design, y'all, was for the dew of heaven to come down onto the earth and water everything, the exact amounts it needs. But there was another thing that took place on the earth, and you know what that is? The birds. The birds, okay? I grew up in the desert wastelands of Colorado. Most people have been brainwashed with really good marketing from Colorado about what it looks like, and they're going to show you these iconic, beautiful Rocky Mountains with streams and babbling brooks and rivers like the Colorado River. The Colorado River, y'all, I've jumped over it in places because it's just a ditch of water in certain spots. It's super tiny, and it can get way crazy bigger during like floods, but most of the times it's pretty small. Like, you can swim across it without even really trying. A lot of times you can't swim across it because it's just knee deep, y'all. The water in the Colorado mountains is extremely seasonal. It's a high desert, meaning there's almost no life in a lot of places of it. Like, we have this area in the mountains, they call it tree line, where there's permafrost. The ground basically doesn't thaw at a certain depth, or a certain elevation, sorry. And what happens is trees no longer grow there. There's still some shrubbery sometimes, and there's some mosses and lichens and stuff like that, but there's really not a lot of plants anymore. It just gets too cold most of the time, and their plants can't really reach down into the soil without freezing. But some plants still make it. But basically, there's no more big trees anymore, right? The trees get smaller in height as you go higher in elevation, too. They get shrunken. And so I grew up in these barren wastelands a lot of times, and one of the things that was lacking often was birds. And because of that, the plants are stunted. You ready for this? In the morning, like when I walked out my door this morning and was walking barefoot in the grass, I heard all these songbirds singing this symphony, and it is beautiful, ornate, intricate, loud, soft, and delicate, and suddenly explosively vibrant. And there's like, it is literally an orchestra of music that is being sung in the early hours, generally before the sun is like 3 degrees below the horizon, and there's just enough light to start to see. I always used to go out in the mornings and try to hear what was the first bird to get a song out. Like, you champion, and I'd cheer for him because I thought he was a stud, right? Or she. Like, way to go, right? You're the first bird of the day. That's got to be like kind of an accomplishment. Anyways, in my mind it was. But I would be sitting out there and I was just hearing this symphony that was being sung out there, and it was so beautiful. And it made me wonder, what is that there for? Like, really? Like, what's that there for? Like, I went and started researching, right? And I started learning about how you can identify basically any place on the face of the earth by the songbirds. Like, you can identify where it is based off of how the songs that are being sung there are happening. You can identify exactly where it was. I read a guy who was doing like a research proposal grant, trying to get money, so that he could basically create an audio track of all the places of the earth to identify everything, not through GPS and all the rest of it, but through the songs of creation. And I thought that was way more edifying and glorifying than any version of false time that we've all been given. But what happens when these plants hear those songs? Do you know what they do? They open their stoma. I'm not even exaggerating this. They open their stoma wider. They dilate their stoma when they hear the songbirds singing that the sun is on its way. They really do. The songbirds announce the arrival of the sun. And what it tells the plants, get ready, because it's about to get scorching hot out there, and you need to be ready for it. And so you know what they do when they open up and they start to breathe in? Because they actually breathe. Plants breathe. You ready for this? Check this out. Look at this little guy. Check out this plantain, which is super edible and medicinal and delicious for your body. Go find edible plantain. It's all over the ground. It's a weed thing. Most people call it weed. They call this a weed. Most people call it lettuce, who know what food is. This is lettuce. This is how it should look most of the time, not the version you buy in the stores. Check this out. They have roots, right? Here we go. Let's see. They have roots, okay? These roots are tapped down into the ground where there's all kinds of minerals and things that they need to get and draw. They're miners, basically. The roots are like the miners. They're mining stuff out of the soil in order to draw it up and feed the plant. And the leaves are converting the sun, which is on its way, right, into sugars through photosynthesis. The stoma on the backside of these leaves, what they're doing is they are drawing in that first breath, and they're breathing in literally carbon dioxide. My waste. Everybody's like, there's carbon dioxide, it's gonna kill everybody. No, like, there's plants that need it to live, and they're all around you, and you just stop murdering them all. It would be a huge change in your life. Plants are here to suck up our carbon dioxide because carbon is absolutely critical, and you have to have it in order for anything to live. These things capture carbon by just breathing. They breathe in the carbon dioxide, and you know what they also breathe in? The dew of the heavens. They literally absorb it through their mouths. They breathe in the dew of the heavens when the songbirds start singing and that dew is sitting on top of their leaves. I never had dew in Colorado where I'm from. Dew never happened. It was not done out there. But out here in the lands of the wilds and the mountains, there is dew abounding, and I love it. And I'm determined to only live in places where there's dew now, because I believe that's part of the blessing, Genesis 27, we're going to get there, that Israel is supposed to have. We, as the children of Israel, are supposed to receive the dew of the heavens, and the dew is supposed to be ours. Now, these plants, when they hear the songbird singing, they open their stoma up. Now, if they don't, like in a barren wasteland of a cornfield, seriously, think about this. Modern agricultural farming. We cut down everything that's like this, right? Sorry, little buddy. We cut down all the stuff like this, and we just monocrop, right? We plant one crop, maybe 2 or 3. Corn, soybean, and, good old-fashioned wheat. It's all genetically engineered to kill your souls. But this stuff is super impressive, because if you have biodiversity, like trees still on your farm, which has led me to an entire endeavor into studying what's called restoration agriculture, or creating food that is planted with trees that you can eat the fruit thereof. And animals can come and eat the fruit thereof as well. They call it silvopasturing. Anyways.
If we look out through here, these are mostly hazelnut shrubs that you see. And if you notice, they're all planted in rows. So this isn't a wild savanna. It's a designed agricultural system, but the ecological model is the oak savanna of the upper Midwest. And if you look out across here, these rows, they tilt slightly towards the ridge. High in the valley, there are water collecting channels that when there's a large rainfall event, a little pond fills up and overflows, and it brings water down the channels out to the ridges. So instead of the water concentrating in the valley, causing flash floods down the valley, it spreads the water out to the ridges. One of the water channels is right in front of us here. You can see how there's just a small little divot. It's about 1 foot deep. Depending on the rainfall patterns of an area, the soil types, the infiltration rate, how fast the water soaks into the soil, the slope of the land, how big the area is that you're catching rain off of, these channels to capture and move the water have to be different sizes. If you look straight down the slope, you see a slightly darker green line here. Part of that darker green line is the fact that it's just below the water collecting channel. There's more water available for the grass to grow, and so it grows just a little bit more vigorously, and so that's the next water collecting channel, is this next green line. I'll walk to it. And so we have all different spacings between channels, everywhere from 15 feet to 100 feet or so, and then boom, down in the channel. And that's the channel right there. Because we're managing the water, instead of having the rain come in thunderstorms, we get these big thunderstorms. Instead of all the water running away, we're collecting it in small ponds up at the heads of valleys and out at the ends of ridges. There are over 40 small-scale ponds, we call them pocket ponds sometimes, that are scattered around the farm. One purpose is for distribution of water, to spread the water out, to allow it to soak in so we have more evenly distributed rainfall. Then the other reason is for amphibians. This is just the end of this is out on the end of a ridge, and the channel is right here. So this whole ridge top here, as that water spreads off the crown of this ridge, catches in the ditch, and it comes out here and it fills this little pond. Here we are 1.5 miles from any surface water nearby, and we've got, look at all the little critters. You can see all the splash rings in there. This is loaded with tadpoles. Why would we want amphibians on the farm? One of the reasons is because amphibians eat insects. So there are insect control in our apple trees and chestnut trees and so on. Many different species of frogs, toads, and one of an endangered frog. At least some of them have showed up to help eat my bugs. Oh wow, it's our first set of ducks. You don't get frogs and you don't get insect-eating birds living out in the middle of a soy field. But this is what we're surrounded by. You know, zillions and zillions of acres, no bird song, no tadpoles, no ducks nesting out there, no life in the soil, just number 2 dent corn, which will provide a lot of starch, but most of it's not even going to human use. Most of it will get fed to livestock, mostly cattle. It takes about 10 pounds of grain to make 1 pound of beef, so 90% of it, of the food energy, is lost. And then another 10 to 15% is used to make ethanol for fuel to burn in our cars. And if you were to eat number 2 dent corn exclusively, there are more deficiencies in it than sufficiencies in it, and you'll die of all kinds of deficiency diseases. Some of the diseases, of course, are caloric excess. So diabetes and obesity are directly related to the fact that we're eating way too much non-nutritious, empty starch. And we're killing the planet to do that. We're totally killing the planet that keeps us alive, that makes our air, keeps the water clean, it keeps all these other life forms alive. We're killing the planet. It used to look like this, and now it looks like that. We can still grow food for people in systems like this. And we can actually even still eat meat, except that we're going to eat meat that doesn't eat things that I can eat. We're going to eat beef or sheep or goats that eat grass or sticks and twigs. Pigs that eat acorns and bitternut hickories. And yet, you come over here and instantly we've got bird song. There's cherries up in the tree, hickory nuts, chestnuts, flowers galore for all of the wild pollinators, grapes on the vines. This place is alive. The soil under our feet is soft. It's actually building, increasing in fertility, increasing in thickness. This is a mulberry right here. Okay. Underneath it, we've got growing some raspberries right in the row with the mulberry. This is a row of elderberries. Then underneath in the shade of the chestnuts, we really can't see them too well from here, there are currants. So basically what's happened here is we've designed a system that we're not hunter-gatherers because we don't have to hunt for it. We know where everything is because we planted it there, but we're gatherers. And so in order to take care of one crop, you harvest another one. Typically what we have harvesting the grass are animals. We've had cattle here probably 15 out of the 23 years or so, and then pigs every year, but 2 or 3 years. What we have around the whole entire property is a perimeter of trees that are dual purpose trees. These are American black walnut. Primarily was planted for like a retirement timber harvest. And underneath it, there's lots of grass. There's still enough sun. They're widely spaced, so they get plenty of sun. They grow faster, and they're widely spaced so that the sun goes through and the grass can grow vigorously. We want the grass to grow vigorously because that's what the animals eat. And then the animals, of course, are part of the fertility cycling. They're urinating and defecating. That's fertilizer for the trees. They're doing the weed control for the trees. And they're also doing a lot of pruning because they're scratching on the trees, which are breaking branches off down low. And black walnut, what's really neat about it is the foliage and the nuts actually are somewhat of a parasiticide to help with any kind of intestinal parasites that the cattle or the pigs might get. This is a system. Some people say, well, what's your most important crop? And it's like, well, no, you're thinking about it in a way that's not helpful to understanding how this works. We're managing an ecosystem here. Some of the benefits of viewing the ecosystem as the model and the most important thing is that if you have a year like last year where we had early warm weather in the spring, all of our fruit trees emerged and flowered early, then we had a normal frost, and we had probably close to zero fruit. So because we were looking at a whole system, we had other parts of the system that did okay. The asparagus did okay, the hazelnuts did okay, the chestnuts did all right. And so with a rich, diverse system, you have a lot of natural pest control, a lot of natural fertility management, a lot of natural disease control. And it may not look all that impressive to some people because it looks a little bit odd, but we've got like right here on your left, this is a pear tree, and next to it is an apple tree. And there's no branches down low. Now I didn't prune those branches down low. The cattle did, probably. They browsed all the branches off. Well, that's actually a benefit, a disease control benefit. And you'll notice that the grass is growing really, really tall right now. Do that for a couple of reasons. One is it's very affordable to not mow the grass. Another reason is because all the ground nesting birds, like meadowlarks for example, they're still fledging their babies, ground nesting birds. So I don't want to mow up all kinds of little birds. And the grass is actually taking nutrients away from the apple trees. So instead of growing vegetatively, long and juicy whips that are now attractive as food for things like sucking insects like tarnished plant bugs and aphids, both of which are carriers of diseases for the trees, by having the long grass, the trees grow slower, less susceptible to sucking insects and the diseases that they carry, while getting the birds, which do what? Eat more bugs. So as a system, it makes a lot of sense. Well, I may not get 5 bushels of grade A picture perfect fruit per tree, but what are my costs so far in producing these apples out here? Nothing. If we got the animals out here, we're gaining pounds of beef and pork. Oh yeah, and then in the fall we can harvest some apples. Well, when we harvest the apples, if they've got bugs in them, you throw the apples on the ground. These little apples on the ground, these have bugs in them. So you can either rake these up with a lawn sweeper, or most of the time we have pigs out here and the pigs are eating these. And they pick them up all by themselves. We don't have to tell them to. We don't have to pay workman's comp, minimum wage, nothing. And then come October, we put them in the freezer. So managed as a system, we're not getting the top yields. We may only get 1 bushel of fruit per tree with revenues instead of costs. So that's infinitely more profitable. It's a lower total dollars coming to the farm, but your margin, your rate of return is almost incalculable.
Anyways, I've been studying a lot of this, and the difference that you will see between people that farm food in a monoculture way is that there is never going to be a bird in that field because there is death in that field. And the plants that are in that, they're not going to open up their stoma nearly as wide, like 70% as wide when they hear the morning songbirds, as those that don't. University of Ottawa, in order to test this out, a gentleman named Dan Carlson pioneered a lot of this stuff back in the 70s, early 70s and 80s, with this stuff called sonic bloom, where he discovered that indeed you can see this under a microscope, that plants will open up so much wider if you play the sounds of songbirds. Beautiful. Now, he developed also a foliar spray, a spray that you would mist that would give the nutrients to the plants directly as they opened their stoma. So you would play this little melody, and then the plants would open their stomas, and then you would mist them. I believe nature has a way better way of doing that. Doesn't require me to buy something else, and it's called birds. Create trees, plant trees like this one, maple tree, that will grow up and create a habitat for birds that want to live there, and then they will sing to your plants. Plant mulberry trees, because they're also biblical. Did you ever read when David was fighting the armies of Absalom? The spirit of Yahweh went in the mulberry trees, which are fruit-bearing, delicious, they're like blackberries that you wanted to have without the thorns, and they produced literal thousands of pounds of them, and they rain down on your head for your children to delight themselves in. And they're great for climbing. I love mulberry trees. Plant mulberry trees, y'all. Trees provide an incredible canopy for birds to nest in, to live in, to eat in, to climb around in, and they sing there. And you know what they do? They sing and they echo out their chorus for the whole farm to hear. The sun is on its way. And I love that so much. And I believe that's what the Creator loves to hear too. Because if that would happen and take place on our farms and on our lands and the places where the Father brings us, it will bring more life there. The University of Ottawa did a study with this sonic bloom, and analyzing whether or not really songbirds really could make this kind of a difference. And you know what they discovered? Wheat, which I'm a big fan of. Check out Becoming a Millenite. Wheat. They had 66% higher yields of wheat when they did sonic sounds of plants sonic sounds of birds singing their morning melodies. 66% higher yields. In another study down in New Mexico, they asked him to grow amaranth, which is just a super high protein, non-grain seed. Amazing. I love amaranth. Reference this picture of me smiling as big as I ever can holding this amaranth plant. I love it so much, and you should love it too, because you can mill with it and grind grain with it, and you can just also bake it and eat it like couscous or cream of wheat. It's what cream of wheat wanted to be before it was poisoned by Monsanto and ruined. amaranth. They normally were yielding 1,600 pounds per acre, and instead they went up to 2,600 pounds per acre. That's a tremendous, and 16 days earlier to harvest. That's a big deal, y'all. That's a huge deal. That's a lot more seeds. So what would happen, my conjecture, is if we allowed the birds to sing their melodies. And so I started thinking, maybe this is why we're supposed to walk around barefoot on wet grass in the mornings while we hear the songbirds. And you know what I think we're supposed to be doing while we're doing that? Singing the songs of our Creator. Like reading the Psalms out loud. And this is something I want to do someday if I get my own land, is to be able to read the scripture to the plants out loud and let them hear the scriptures and see if that doesn't produce more abundant yields. And instead, I'm going to do it to your souls. So that's why I read the scriptures to you guys, because I think it literally waters the souls of your heart. But then I was standing there and I came back inside, right? And I started praying, because that's what I'm prone to do. I got down on my knees to pray and lay on my face. And I was praying and I was groaning. Lately, I've been crying a lot because sometimes some things suck. And I had some bad crap happen to me in my life. And it just comes back and kicks me straight in the teeth sometimes. And it sucks. And I was weeping and I was groaning and I was crying. And then all of a sudden, all of this stuff hit me because I realized that what does it sound like to the Father in the morning, in the quiet hours, when those people who rose up early to pray and were disciplined enough to not fall into the trap of convenience, and they actually rose up like 1 hour early. Like each and every one of you, I challenge you, sincerely challenge you, get up 1 hour earlier than you have to and spend that time, 30 minutes. If you can, go walk barefoot on grass or wet rocks. Go walk barefoot and hear the morning birds and pray. And then read the Sword of the Covenant and wash your mind with this living water for 30 minutes. And you don't tell me how much of a transformation that's going to have in your life. This is the disciplines like of a righteous man and a righteous woman. It takes discipline to do this, but like you're not called to a peaceful time. You're called to a time of great war and tragedy. And I had spent the last few weeks studying and researching all of these things that are taking place out there in the worldly system, and the marks and the shots and all of this nightmares and shortages, and all this stuff is being shot at us like a virus of fear. And they're trying to just onslaught so many of us. And you know what I took refuge in? The songbirds and the sound of this being read out loud. When I gather around with my family or friends and I fellowship and I hear people reading the word out loud, and I hear people reading out their prayers, crying out their prayers in different tones and tones and sounds and languages. What must it sound like for the Father when he hears in the early morning hours his people rising up to pray in every languages? Because some days you're rejoicing and you're so happy and you're delighted, and that's all that's coming out of you is rejoicing. And there's other times where it's groans that are so inexpressible you can't even speak, you just moan, right? It's every single time that people will speak out his words and read them back to him. He gets to hear the orchestra of man. He gets to hear the sounds of his creation. And I believe that is what he longs to hear. I believe that is what he designed us to hear. And you know what I believe happens when that takes place? The heart of the Father opens up, that his heart swells. And you know what he gives? The dew of the heavens. Listen to this. This is Genesis chapter 27. For a little backstory, Jacob, Yaakov, is the child of Isaac, Yitzhak, who's the child of Abraham. These are like the founding fathers, right? The true founding fathers, more so like Noah and Adam, right? We read about that guy earlier. These are the founding fathers. Literally, Jacob is where Israel comes from. Yaakov. Okay, you ready for this? So this is Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 27. You ready? And it came to be, when Yitzhak was old, and his eyes were too dim to see, that he called Esau, his elder son, and said to him, My son. And he answered him and said, Here I am. And he said, See now, I am old, and I do not know the day of my death. Now then, please, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt wild game for me, and make me a tasty dish such as I love, and bring it to me to eat, in order that my being may Baruch you before I die. And Rivkah heard when Yitzhak spoke to Esau her son, And Esau went to the field to hunt wild game and to bring it. And Rivkah spoke to Yaakov her son, saying, See, I heard your father speak to Esau, your brother, saying, Bring me wild game, and make me a tasty dish to eat, and barak you in the presence of Yahuwah before my death. And now, my son, listen to my voice according to what I command you. Please, go to the flocks and bring me 2 choice young goats, and I make a tasty dish from them for your father, such as he loves. And you shall take it to your father, and he shall eat it, so that he might barak you before his death. And Yaakov said to Rivkah, his mother, See, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth-skinned man. What if my father touches me? Then shall I be like a deceiver in his eyes, and shall bring a curse on myself, and not a barakah, a blessing. But his mother said to him, Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice, and go, get them for me. And he went and fetched them and brought them to his mother, and his mother made a tasty dish, such as his father loved. And Rivkah took the best garments of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on Yaakov, her younger son. And she put the skins of the young goats on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. And then she gave him the tasty dish and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Yaakov. And he went to his father and said, My father. And he said, Here I am. Who are you, my son? And Yaakov said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. And I have done as you said to me. Please, rise, sit and eat of my wild game, so that your being might barak me. But Yitzhak said to his son, How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? And he said, Because Yahuwah your Elohim brought it to me. Then Yitzhak said to Yaakov, Please, come near, so that I feel you, my son, whether you truly are my son Esau or not. And Yaakov went near to Yitzhak his father, and he felt him and said, The voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like his father Esau's hands, and he barak him. And he said to him, Are you truly my son Esau? And he said, I am. And he said, Bring it near to me, and let me eat of my son's wild game, so that my being might barak you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate. And he brought him wine, and he drank. And his father Yitzhak said to him, Please, come near and kiss me, my son. And he came near and kissed him. And he smelled the smell of his garments, and barak him, and said, See, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field, which Yahuwah has barak. And Elohim give you the dew of the Shemayim, heavens, of the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be master over your brothers, and let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be those cursing you, and Baruch be those who barakah you. And it came to be, as soon as Yitzhak had finished barak Yaakov, and Yaakov had hardly left the presence of Yitzhak his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. And he too had made a tasty dish and brought it to his father, and said to his father, Let my father rise and eat of his son's wild game, so that your being might barak me. And his father Yitzhak said, Who are you? And he said, I am your son, your firstborn, Esau. And Yitzhak shuddered with exceeding great trembling, and said, Who is it then who hunted wild game and brought it to me? And I ate all of it before you came, and I have baraked him. Even so, he is baruch. And when Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, Barak me, Me too! Oh, my father! And he said, Your brother came with deceit and took your barakah. And Esau said, What's his name? Then called Yaakov. For he has caught me by the heel these 2 times. He took my birthright, and see, now he has taken my barakah. And he said, Have you not reserved a barakah for me? Then Yitzhak answered and said to Esau, See, I have made him your master, and all his brothers I have given to him as servants, and I've sustained him with grain and wine. And what then shall I do for you, my son? And Esau said to his father, Have you only one barakah for me, my father? Barak me too, oh my father! And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Yitzhak his father answered and said, See, your dwelling is of the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of the Shemaimim from above. By your sword you are to live, and serve your brother. And it shall be when you grow restless that you shall break his yoke from your neck. And Esau hated Yaakov because of the barakah which his father barak him. And Esau said in his heart, The days of mourning for my father draw near. Then I am going to kill my brother Yaakov. And the words of Esau, her older son, were reported to Rivkah. And she sent and called Yaakov, her younger son, and said to him, See, your brother Esau comforts himself concerning you, to kill you. And now, my son, listen to my voice, and rise, and flee to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay with him a few days until your brother's wrath turns away, until your brother's displeasure turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. And I shall send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereaved of you both in one day? And Rivkah said to Yitzhak, I am disgusted with my life because of the daughters of Heth. If Yaakov takes a wife from the daughters of Heth like these, who are the daughters of the land, and what is my life? And Yitzhak called Yaakov, and baraked him, and commanded him, and said to him, Do not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Arise and go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your father's mother. And Yitzhak called Yaakov, and baraked him, and commanded him, and said to him, Do not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your father's mother, your mother's father, and take a wife for yourself from there, from the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. And El Shaddai barak you, and make you bear fruit and increase you, and you shall become an assembly of peoples. And give you the barakah of Abraham to you and your seed with you, so that you inherit the land of your sojournings, which Elohim gave to Abraham. This is what his people were supposed to carry, the dew of the heavens, so that we could be fruitful and multiply. Again, I challenge each and every one of you to be fruitful and multiply, because he has given us the dew of the heavens. His doctrine falls like dew out of the sky when we read this. When we read this, we are drinking in the dew of the heavens. Do you remember where manna came from? The bread that came down from heaven? Gosh, come on. This is so salty. This is totally going to be a Becoming a Millennight episode. John chapter 6, y'all. Yochanan. Fundamentals here. The manna that accompanied the people, that fed them in the wilderness when the children of Israel were going to the land of their inheritance. Millions of them. Millions of human beings who all had to need to eat, to drink, and to be satisfied, to be sheltered, to be warm, to be clothed. The Father promises us as part of his covenant, if we regard him and if we think about his name, revere his name, he will bless us. He will clothe us. That's why For our family, we want to clothe the naked. That is one of our deepest desires. And I thank you sincerely, every one of you who has contributed to that, because most of you guys don't know this, but the reason that we can do this is because somebody else has paid for your garments, paid for your shipping. When you guys receive a garment or a package from the LinenRailroad, that's because somebody else bought that for you. The Father gave us that to give to you, and he gave us somebody else who loved you enough to pay for your garments of praise so that you guys could be clothed or you guys could be fed, because we are so excited that we are seeing people on the Becoming a Millenite or Becoming a Linenite groups that are feeding each other, buying each other grain mills, sending each other grain. Like, people have nourished and fed my family. I got off of working on a farm where I was pouring the sweat of my face into the earth as a volunteer, and you know what happened? Grain showed up. Literally, buckets of grain showed up. And you know what happened? Rejoicing broke out. A symphony, a chorus of praise broke out because somebody loved and nourished my family and fed us. And you know what my wife did from that? She'll never tell you guys this. She feeds people with that. That's what she does. She bakes bread and bakes grain, because the one thing about making a bread is that you can't make one muffin. You can't make one biscuit. You know what? You always have enough to share. And that's what it was designed to be. Manna was the dew that came down from heaven, and the bread was waiting for the people to go out and gather it and collect it and grind it up and eat it, and they would be sustained and satisfied, and they would have all their daily needs met every single day. And it was falling out of the sky, because that was the promise that Yaakov got from Yitzhak, his father, that the dew of the heavens would sustain him and he would eat the fruit of the land. But you know what? One came down from heaven. The bread that came down from heaven, Yeshua. You ready for this? And after this, Yeshua went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, that is the lake of Kinnethareth, and saw a large crowd was following him, because they saw his signs which he did on those who were sick. And Yeshua went up on a mountain, and there he sat down with his Talmudim. And the Pesach was near, the festival of the Yahudim. Then Yeshua, lifting up his eyes and seeing a large crowd coming towards him, said to his Philippos, "Where shall we buy bread for them to eat?" And this he said, trying him, for he himself knew what he would do. And Philippos answered him and said, 200 pieces of silver worth of bread is not sufficient for them, for every one of them to receive even a little. And one of his Talmudim, Andrew, the brother of Shimon, Kepha, said to him, "Here's a boy who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are these for so many?" And Yeshua said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was much grass in the place. Grass! Plants! Because a good shepherd leads his people to pasture. Psalm 23. Now, they sat down, and Yeshua took the loaves, and having given thanks, he distributed them to his Talmudim, and the Talmudim to those sitting down, and the same with the fish, as much as they wanted. And when they were filled, he said to his Talmudim, "Gather the broken pieces that are left over, so that none gets wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with broken pieces of the 5 barley loaves, which were left over by those who had eaten. Then the men, having seen the sign Yeshua did, said, "Truly, this is the Nabi who is coming to the world." Then Yeshua, knowing that they were about to come and seize him, that they might make him a sovereign, withdrew again to the mountains, alone by himself. And when the evening came, his Talmudim went down to the sea. And entering into the boat, they were going over the sea towards Kephar Nachem. And it had already become dark, and Yeshua had not yet come to them. And the sea was rising because a great wind was blowing. And when they had rowed about 25 or 30 stadios, they saw Yeshua walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were terrified. And he said to them, "It is I! Do not be afraid!" And they determined therefore to take him into the boat, and at once the boat was at land where they were going. That's teleportation. On the next day, the crowd that was standing on the other side of the sea saw that there was no other boat there except the one into which his Talmudim had entered. And then Yeshua had not entered the boat with his Talmudim, but his Talmudim went away alone. But the other boats came from Kinneth, near the place where they had eaten the bread after Adon had given thanks. Therefore, when the crowd saw that Yeshua was not there, nor his Talmudim, they themselves also entered into the boats and came to Capharnaum, seeing Yeshua. And having found him on the other side of the sea, they asked him, Rabbi, when did you come here? And Yeshua answered them, Truly, truly, I say to you, you seek me, not because you saw signs, but because you ate of the loaves and were satisfied. Now do not labor for the food that is perishing, but for the food that is remaining to everlasting life, which the Ben of Adam shall give you. For the Father Elohim has put his seal on him. So they said to him, What should we do to do the works of Elohim? And Yeshua answered and said to them, This is the work of Elohim, that you believe in him who he sent. So they said to him, What sign then you do, so that we see and believe in you? What would you do? Our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, as it has been written, He gave them bread out of the Shemaim to eat. Therefore Yeshua said to them, Truly, truly, I say to you, Moshe did not give you the bread out of the Shemaim, but my Father gives you the true bread out of the Shemaim. For the bread of Elohim is he who comes down out of the Shemaim and gives high to the world life. So they said to him, Adonai, give us this bread always. And Yeshua said to them, I am the bread of high. He who comes down to me shall not get hungry at all, and he who believes in me shall not get thirsty at all. But I said to you that you have seen me and still do not believe. And all that the Father gives me shall come to me, and the one who comes to me I shall by no means cast out. Because I have come down out of the Shemaim not to do my own desire, but the desire of him who sent me. And this is the desire of the Father who sent me, that all he has given me I should not lose of it, but should raise it in the last day. And this is the desire of him who sent me, that everyone who sees the Ben and believes in him should possess everlasting high, and I shall raise him up on the last day. Therefore the Yahudim were grumbling against him, because he said, I am the bread which came down out of the Shemaim. And they said, Is not this Yeshua, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How is it then that he says, I have come down out of the Shemaim? Then Yeshua answered and said to them, Do not grumble with one another. No one is able to come nearer to me, unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I shall raise him up on the last day. It has been written in the Nabim, and they shall all be taught by Yahuwah. Everyone then who has heard me from the Father and learned comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father except he who is from Elohim. He has seen the Father. So truly, truly I say to you, he who believes in me possesses everlasting high. I am the bread of high life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread which comes down out of Shemaim, so that anyone might eat of it and not die. I am the living bread, which comes down out of the Shemaim. And if anyone eats of this bread, he shall live forever. And indeed, the bread that I shall give is my flesh, which I shall give for the high of the world. And the Yahudim therefore were striving with one another, saying, How is this one able to give us the flesh to eat? And Yeshua therefore said to them, Truly, truly, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Ben of Adam and drink his blood, you possess no high in yourselves. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood possesses everlasting high, and I shall raise him up on the last day. For my flesh is truly food, and my blood is truly drink. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood stays in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so he who feeds on me shall live because of me. This is the bread which came down out of the Shemaim, not as your fathers ate the manna and died. For he who eats this bread shall live forever. Yeshua is identified as the Word who became flesh. The flesh of Yeshua that we are to eat is the Word. the bread of life. It is our daily bread. And if you will walk out the doors while the sun is yet started its circuit in the heavens, if you will walk out the doors while the sun has not yet risen, and listen to the sound of the morning birds, and let your feet walk on the dew of the heavens, on the bottom of your feet are thousands and thousands and thousands of things, very much like these stoma that allow us to perspire and respire out of it, that sponge up, soak up all of these little oils and minerals that are saturated in these leaves, medicines that are right there out our doors, that we have disregarded, that we have mowed down, that we've sprayed with poisons, that we've sprayed over the air and saturated them with death because we think they're a nuisance. But these plants are there to give us life. His word is there to give us life. And no matter how much the enemy, the author of that virus of fear that is trying to tell you that there's not going to be enough of this resource or that we're all going to die, that somebody is going to send a roving gang down the road to kick down your door and shove stuff in your body, no matter how many times they try to get you to fear them men, his dew is waiting to fall upon you. He will drop his doctrines like rain, because you know what? This is what he will give us. He promises us he will give us good shepherds again. These are the shepherds that we need to pray for and to cry out for. This is Malachi chapter 2. If you guys don't know about kombucha, brew your own. It's delicious. Side note. And now, O Kahanim, this command is for you. If you do not hear, and if you do not take it to heart, to give esteem to my name, said Yahuwah of hosts, I shall send a curse upon you, and I shall curse your Berakoth. And indeed, I have cursed them, because you did not take it to heart. See, I shall rebuke your seed and scatter dung before your faces, the dung of your festivals, and you shall be taken away with it. And you shall know that I have sent this command to you, as being my covenant with Levi, says Yahuwah Sevaoth. My covenant with him was high and peace, life and peace. And I gave them to him to revere. And he revered me and stood in awe of my name. The Torah of truth was in his mouth, and unrighteousness was not found in his lips. He walked with me in peace and straightness, and turned many away from wickedness. For the lips of a Kohen, priest, should guard knowledge, and they seek the Torah from his mouth. For he is the messenger of Yahuwah, a Sevaoth. But you have turned from the way. You have caused many to stumble in the Torah. You have corrupted the covenant of Levi, says Yahuwah of hosts. And I also shall make you despised and low before the people, because you are not guarding my ways and are showing partiality in the Torah. Have we not all one Father? Did not one El create us? So why did we act treacherously one against another to profane the covenant of our fathers? Yehuda has acted treacherously, and an abomination has been done in Yasharel and in Jerusalem. For Yehuda has profaned what is Kodesh, holy, to Yahuwah, which he had loved. And he has married the daughter of a foreign mighty one. Let Yahuwah cut off from the tents of Yaakov the man who does this, stirring up or answering and bringing an offering to Yahuwah Sevaoth. And this you have done a second time. You cover the altar of Yahuwah with tears, with weeping and crying, because he no longer regards the offering, nor receives it with pleasure from your hands. And you have said, why? Because Yahuwah has been witness between you and the wife of your youth, against whom you have acted treacherously, though she is your companion and the wife of your covenant. And did he not make one? And had the remnant of Ra'ua? And what is the one? He seeks a seed of Elohim. So you shall guard your spirit, and let none act treacherously against the wife of his youth. For I hate divorce, says Yahuwah Elohim of Yasharel, and the one who covers his garment with cruelty, says Yahuwah Sevaoth. So you shall guard your spirit, and do not act treacherously. For you have wearied Yahuwah with your words, and you have said, in what way have we wearied him? In that you say, everyone who does evil is good in the eyes of Yahuwah, and he is delighting in them. Or where is the Elohim of right ruling? See, I am sending my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. Then suddenly Edon, you are seeking, comes to his Hekal temple, even the messenger of the covenant, in whom you delight. See, he is coming, says Yahuwah of Sevaoth. And who is able to bear the day of his coming? And who is able to stand when he appears? For he is like the fire of a refiner, and like the soap of a launderer. And he shall sit as a refiner, and a cleanser of silver. And he shall cleanse the sons of Levi, and refine them as gold and silver. And they shall belong to Yahuwah, bringing near an offering in righteousness. Then shall the offering of Yehuda and Jerusalem be pleasant to Yahuwah, as in the days of old, as in the former years. And I shall draw near to you for right ruling. And I shall be as a swift witness against the practicers of witchcraft, and against the adulterers, and against them that swear to falsehood, and against those who oppress the wage earner in his wages, and the widows and the fatherless, and those who turn away a sojourner, and do not revert me, says Yahuwah Sevaoth. For I am Yahuwah, and I shall not change, and you, O sons of Yaakov, shall not come to an end. From the days of your fathers you have turned aside from my laws, and did not guard my... So turn back to me, and I shall turn back to you, says Yahuwah Sevaoth. But you said, in what shall we turn back? Would a man rob Elohim? Yet you are robbing me. But you said, in what have we robbed you? In the tithes and the offerings. For you have cursed me with a curse, for you are robbing me, this nation, all of it. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, and let there be food in my house. And please prove me in this, says Yahuwah Sevaoth, whether I do not open for you the windows of the Shemaim, and shall pour out for you boundless barakah. And I shall rebuke the devourer for you, so that it does not destroy the fruit of your ground, nor does the vine fail to bear fruit for you in the field, says Yahuwah Sevaoth. And all the nations shall call you Baruch, for you shall be a land of delight, says Yahuwah Sevaoth. And your words have been harsh against me, says Yahuwah. But you have said, what have we spoken against you? And you have said, it is worthless to serve Elohim. And what did we gain when we guarded his charge, and when we walked as mourners before Yahuwah Sevaoth? And now we are calling the proud Baruch. Not only are the doers of wickedness built up, but also try Elohim and escape. Then shall those who revere Yahuwah speak to one another, and Yahuwah shall listen and hear. And a book of remembrance shall be written before him of those who revere Yahuwah, and of those who think upon his name. They shall be mine, says Yahuwah Sevaoth, on the day that I prepared a treasured possession, and I shall spare them as a man spares his own son who serves him. Then you shall again see between the righteous and the wicked, between the one who serves Elohim and the one who does not serve him. Yahuwah says, if we think upon his name and talk to each other about his name, about who he is, about his character, his Shem, his glory, his attributes, his characteristics of what makes him him, when we talk about his word, the flesh of his body, when we eat of it, it's in our mouth when we're talking about it. Do you understand? His flesh is in our mouth when we're speaking the words, not going through some transmutation ritual where some piece of bread is turning into flesh and we're eating like cannibals. No. When we have his words in our mouth, when we talk to each other about him, and when we talk about his name, there are scriptures that I don't enjoy reading as much anymore because they took his name out of it. And it matters. When you take his name out 5,000 times, 4,300 times, when you take his name out of the scriptures and you replace it with a title that can mean any god or any lord or Baal, when you replace it, it loses its saltiness. It loses its magnificence. It loses its dew that comes down from heaven because you're devoiding it. You're stripping it of his name. And he is all about his name. He wants his people to be all about his name. And I know that this is the dew that came down from heaven and watered my soul. Because for the first 2.5 years of my ministry and my life where I was trying to pursue being a minister, you know what I was? Penniless, feeling worthless, and I would sit there and you know what? I was one of these people that cried out and accused the Father and saying things like, why is it is worthless to serve Elohim? And I've heard other ministers who leave the ministry because they're looking for the blessings to come through finances back upon them for ministering. But you know what I've realized? When I stopped doing that and when I began to just go work in the fields and then still labor here, the Father brought me blessings from the fruit of the field. He blesses me out of nature. And you know what? Most of the time it's by the sweat of my face I get to eat the bread. But occasionally the Father moves it on somebody else and they nourish and feed my family from somewhere else. And out of that, we're able to give it away to somebody else we see who's never had that grain, who's never had these clothing. And out of ours, we can give to others. He designed this world to be a system of giving. That's the word Nathan. We are here, each and every one of us, to give our lives away. Everything we have to everyone we can, because this is what we are here for. We are supposed to be blessed by the dew that comes down from our Father in heaven in every area of our life. And we are supposed to be able to give to others, to clothe the naked sojourner who is among us, to clothe the people who are in bondage with the words of deliverance, to open the eyes of the blind, and to blind those who think they can see. This is the word that comes down from heaven, and he gives it all to each and every one of us. And I encourage each of and every one of you out there, go support the people that go and do these things. For me this time, the Hallelujah Scriptures is way up on my list. Because you know what they did? When they sent this Bible to me, they also sent me the audio Bible for free. And I've done an audiobook. I produced an entire audiobook. I give that whole thing away free on my website. You can go to YouTube too and see the whole playlist there. And if you can't afford any of my books or any of my content or material, just ask me, I'll give it to you. But look at this. This is the opening pages of this book, Bible. Free, never to be sold. And they gave me these audio Bibles, dramatized audio Bibles, for free. It is so much work to make an audio Bible. I don't know how much work it is to make an audio Bible. I know how much work it is to make one audio book. Last time I was doing all this farming and everything else, between 3 in the morning and 6 in the morning, while I was working full-time on a farm, which is the hardest I had ever worked in my life up until that point. Between 3 in the morning and 6 in the morning, I would get up and record that thing. I would move my toaster oven out of this box that it sits in and put it on the ground and put it in a bunch of stuffings and pillows in that box. And I would put my microphone in there, and then I would clip my phone next to me, and I would read my audiobook. I would read my book into that microphone. And that's why if you listen to my audiobook, it sounds like I'm whispering. It's because I live in a rectangle with something that looks like a door, but it's not a door. And I'm trying not to wake my sleeping babies and children. Do you know what I mean? It's not just for an effect. But I did that every morning for months in order to produce that audiobook. And then for every minute that I record, it was 7 to 10 minutes of post-production work. So for even my videos, when I do this, every 1 minute here is 6 minutes outside of here in production land. That time that this Hallelujah Scriptures ministry has put forward to produce a Bible, not only that, they give away an audio Bible, which must have taken thousands of hours to produce. And to me, that is in line with the way the Father wants this world to work. He wants us to go receive from Him the blessings that come out of His creation and to multiply out of the fruit of our excess and abundance. He will give us plenty to feed and nourish and sustain people all over the earth. And I believe that, and I'm banking my whole life on it. I will give everything I have ever had away so that I can see this proven to be true, because I believe the blessings that are coming down from heaven are always there, and they're waiting, and they're in the dew that is falling on the ground that is waiting for us to just walk upon it and be healed. I really mean that. Go walk outside, hear the songbirds singing the melodies of our Creator. You sing them the scriptures. You cry out to them and pray to our Creator, and you watch and see that the water of the Word will wash your soul and rejuvenate you and nourish you and sustain you and provide you everything you ever need, just like He did to the children in the wilderness, just like He did to His people from the beginning of time until now. I love you. I thank you guys so much for all of your kindness, your compassion, your generosity, and your sincerity of love that you have for my family and for each other. Go and serve and nourish each other, for the days may be evil, you guys. But be of good cheer, because you were born for such a time as this. So go live dangerously every single day of your life. I love you. I'll talk to you soon.